Quayle was dead when we got there. He had a knife in his chest. Been dead about 10 minutes, I should say.
What did Martin say?
It was helpful, but he refused to make a statement. When we got him to the station, I took his fingerprints and that put the wind up him, I think. He asked to see you, that's why I phoned.
Tell me a little more about Mr. Quayle.
I'm afraid I can't tell you a great deal. He was a bachelor, seemed fairly well off. He had a half-sister who ran a hotel somewhere near Maidenhead.
Maidenhead?
Yes.
Her name wasn't Curtis by any chance, was it?
Yes, that's right. Mrs. Curtis, the Royal Falcon. Why, do you know her?
Yes, I do. Martin's brother died under rather unusual circumstances at the Royal Falcon.
Did he? When was this?
About a week ago.
Ah, that's interesting.
You sent for Mrs. Curtis?
Yes, she's down here now. She arrived about an hour ago.
How did she take it?
Difficult to say. She was upset, of course. Oh, she brought a chap down with her called Douglas Talbot.
He runs the place for her.
Pompous ass. Does nothing but ask questions. Seems to think he's some sort of private eye or something. Why do you think Larry Martin went to see Quayle? Was it to question him about his brother?
Yes, I should think so. Martin's convinced it wasn't suicide. He's certain his brother was murdered.
What do you think?
We've no proof it was murder, so naturally...
That's not what I asked you.
Frankly, I'm inclined to agree with Martin. There's something funny about this whole thing. Damn funny. I suppose you read about that Chelsea shooting in the paper. Young service chap, Andy Wilson.
Yes.
He was a friend of Philip Martin's. He just left Larry's studio when some character in a car took a pot shot at him. He was damn lucky he wasn't killed.
Have you seen Wilson?
Yes, I saw him this morning. I tried to talk to him about a photograph, but I couldn't get anything out of him.
Photograph?
Yes.
Is it by any chance a photograph of a man and a woman? The woman playing the accordion?
Yes, it was.
Martin told us to collect a book and some photographs from Quayle's antique shop. He said you'd be interested.
What was the book?
Book of poems by...
Belloc? Hilaire Belloc?
Yes, that's right. That's the fella.
Martin's right. I am interested.
So I arranged to meet Mrs. Curtis at the cafe.
Taking this key with you?
Yes.
When she refused to talk, you decided to come down here and see Quayle.
Yes.
In other words, you decided to swap the key for information.
Well, yes. You can put it that way if you like.
You must have thought this key was pretty important.
Well, I got the impression it was important.
From Mrs. Curtis?
Both from Mrs. Curtis and from Quayle.
Now, tell me again about this woman. What was her name? Selden. What happened after she left the antique shop?
Well, I wandered around the shop for a while, waiting for Quayle to come back. It was then that I noticed the book. Then, after a little while, the phone rang. And as Quayle didn't appear, I began to wonder what had happened, so I went down to the basement. But there was no sign of him. He'd already been taken out to the car, of course.
You found these photographs on the floor?
Some on the floor and some on a filing cabinet.
Where was the book?
Well, the book was upstairs in the shop, on top of a bureau.
Or was it in a prominent position? Or could you see it as soon as you walked into the shop?
Well, you could if you were looking for it.
Now, this Mrs. Selden, I take it you'd recognize her again.
Oh, yes, I would.
Do you think she had anything to do with it?
Yes, I do. I think the people who murdered Quayle turned up while I was talking to him. I think they went down into the basement while she came back into the shop and talked Quayle into showing her that nest of tables.
He went down there. Her friends were waiting for him.
Yes.
I thought you said you heard his voice as Mrs. Selden was leaving.
Yes, I did.
How do you explain that?
Well, someone could have been telling him what to say. Someone with a knife, for instance. They're all the same. They're all reproductions of the one that Phil showed me, the one that was in the showcase.
Yes,
Incidentally, last time we met, you said you were going to see Andy Wilson.
I've seen him.
Well, did you ask him what he meant by that remark about destroying the photograph?
Yes, I asked him. He didn't tell me.
Why, was he too ill to talk?
No, he just wouldn't talk, that's all. Thank you.
Do you think he'd talk to me?
I don't know, Mr. Martin. He might. Did you touch the knife?
The knife?
The knife that killed Quayle.
I don't know. I don't remember. I might have done, I suppose. Why?
They found your fingerprints on it.
I'm sure Mrs. Curtis would like to get back to Maidenhead as soon as possible. So if there are any other questions, Inspector, perhaps...
If you'd just bear with us for a minute or two longer, sir. Now, Mrs. Curtis, you say that you'd never heard of Mrs. Selden, and you don't know why your brother had these photographs, or the book?
No. The photographs are a complete mystery. I've never seen them before. The book? My brother was an intellectual. He read all kinds of books.
Yes, but this is the same book that Philip Martin was reading. A book of poems. Mrs. Curtis, doesn't it strike you as being rather a strange coincidence that your brother should have had a copy of the same book on display in his antique shop?
Look, Inspector, hasn't it occurred to you that perhaps Thomas knew nothing about the book or the photographs?
No, sir, it hasn't occurred to me.
You were told about the book and the photograph by Mr. Martin after Thomas had been murdered.
Yes.
Well then, isn't it possible that Martin's lying and he brought both the book and the photographs down here himself?
Yes, sir, it's possible.
And another thing, Inspector, it strikes me as being a rather strange coincidence that Martin should be friendly with someone who was staying at the hotel at the same time as his brother.
Oh. Who was he friendly with?
Dr. Linderhoff.
Do you mean the German from Hamburg?
Yes, that's right.
Now, let's get this quite straight. Are you telling me Larry Martin knew Dr. Linderhoff?
Yes, that is the point I'm trying to convey, Inspector.
How do you know this?
Shortly after Philip Martin committed suicide, Dr. Linderhoff made a phone call. I accidentally overheard part of it. I didn't know who he was talking to, but the name Philip was mentioned several times. Naturally, I was curious.
Go on.
Well, Linderhoff made an appointment to see the person he was talking to. After he'd finished the call, I checked with the switchboard and found out the number.
It was Larry Martin's.
Yes.
Why haven't I been told about this phone call before?
I wasn't sure that it was important. In any case, it's not easy to tell the police anything. They seem to know the lot.
Not quite the lot, sir.
Look up again. That's it, thanks. Well, that should save some moans from Carol about hanging around while I set up. She's always in such a frantic hurry these days.
I don't know what she's got to learn about it. You'd think she was the only model in the whole of London who could wear a swimsuit.
There she is. Run along, Ruth. Don't keep the young lady waiting.
I hope he's not in the middle of the session.
No, but he is just about to start one. Inspector Hyde.
Good morning, Mr. Martin.
Oh, good morning, Inspector. What can I do for you this time?
Mr. Martin, tell me, do you by any chance know a man called Harris? Luther Harris?
Yes?
What do you know about him?
Well, he was a friend of my brother's. He has a music shop in St. John's Wood. Pop's Corner, I think they call it.
Yes, that's right, sir. Tell me, is he a friend of Andy Wilson's?
Yes. Phil and Andy always made a point of dropping in on him when they were home on leave. They used to spend hours listening to his gramophone records, but I don't think they ever bought one.
Have you met Mr. Harris?
Yes?
When?
Oh, I bumped into him on several occasions when I was out with my brother. Why are you interested in Harris?
He visited Andy Wilson yesterday morning.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. He's a friend of Andy's. He wrote me a very nice letter when my brother died. How is Andy?
Oh, he's going to get better, sir. He still won't talk. He refuses to say anything about the book or the photographs. Incidentally, he wants to see you. I've told him you'll drop in and see him this evening.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Martin, this is one of the photographs you found at Quayle's. I want you to take another look at it.
Why?
I'd just like you to take another look at it, sir, please.
Well?
You don't know those people. You haven't the slightest idea who they are. Is that right, sir?
Yes, of course that's right. Of course I don't know them. I've told you this before.
Yes, you have, sir. Thank you very much.
Now, is there anything else, Inspector? Because I've got a very busy morning.
Yes, there is something else, sir. You told me on several occasions you haven't the slightest idea why your brother went down to Maidenhead. Isn't it possible he went down there to see a friend of yours, sir?
Friend of mine?
Dr. Linderhoff.
And who told you Dr. Linderhoff was a friend of mine?
Is he a friend of yours?
No, most certainly not. I've only met the man once.
When did you meet him, sir?
2 days ago.
Where did you meet him, sir?
Here. He came to the flat.
Don't you think it might be a good idea if you told me all about Dr. Linderhoff?
Yes, I do. I did intend to.
Yeah,
tell
I'm
you.
sure you did, sir.
Yes, well, I went down to Maidenhead to see Mrs. Curtis, and when I got back, Dr. Linderhoff was here waiting for me.
Were you expecting it?
Well, no, of course not. I'd never met the man. But he told me that he'd overheard a private conversation between Mrs. Curtis and my brother. Linderhoff said he heard my brother say, "I'm going back to London. I'm not going to spend another minute sitting here reading this book and waiting for that friend of yours." And then Mrs. Curtis replied, "If I were you, I'd wait, even if it means staying here the rest of the week."
Did Linderhoff hear anything else?
Yes. Yes, he heard my brother say, "I'm not waiting a day longer, and that's final."
And that's all?
Yep.
It's a very interesting story, Mr. Martin. Why didn't Linderhoff tell it to me instead of to you?
Well, apparently he's in some sort of trouble. He comes up before the German medical authorities next week, and he doesn't want any publicity. Well, he was afraid that if he went to the police about it...
Yes, I get the point, sir.
Carol's arrived.
Well, I'll leave you to get on with your work, sir. Give me a ring after you've seen Andy Wilson. I'd like to know what happens. If you can't get me at the yard, I shall be at Kensington 7255.
Look, sweetie, I hope this isn't going to take long because I'm in a frantic hurry. I've got to be at the Savoy at 12 o'clock.
A visitor to see you, Mr. Wilson. Only a few minutes, I'm afraid, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Well, Andy, how are you feeling now?
Can't grumble, I suppose.
Well, here I am. You did say you wanted to see me.
Yes, I did.
Yes. Well, have you got everything you want? I mean, if there's anything you need,
I'm all right, thanks.
You got something to tell me, haven't you, Andy?
Yes. I'm sorry about the book, Larry. I shouldn't have taken it.
Why did you take it?
I don't know.
Andy, please don't insult my intelligence. You wanted that book for a particular reason.
Yes.
Well, what was that reason? All right, if you won't tell me about the book, tell me about Phil. What was he doing down at Maidenhead? What was Phil mixed up in? I have a right to know, Andy. I'm his brother. Look, if you don't intend to talk, why did you send for me?
I wanted to warn you.
Warn me?
Yes.
About what?
You know what happened to Phil. It wasn't suicide. He was murdered.
Yes, I know that.
Well, I don't want the same thing to happen to you. And it will happen to you, Larry, unless...
Unless what?
Unless you stop interfering.
Well, what do you suggest? That I go home and forget the whole business? That I stop trying to find out why my brother was murdered?
Yes.
You're scared. You're really scared, aren't you, Andy?
Yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared to hell, and I don't care who knows it. These people are desperate, Larry. Once they make up their mind to...
Go on. Go on, Andy. Who are these people?
I don't know. I've said too much already. Larry, I'm sorry I don't feel too good. Please leave me alone.
Andy, listen, you may as well understand this right now. I'm going through with this. I'm not giving up till I find out what it was Phil was mixed up in and why he was murdered.
All right, if that's the way you want it, go ahead. But I've warned you, Larry. I've told you what'll happen.
What was Phil mixed up in? Who are these people?
I'm sorry, Larry. I've said too much already. I'm not saying anything else. Nurse?
Did you call, Mr. Wilson?
Yes, I'm too tired to talk. I want to go to sleep.
I'm sorry, Mr. Martin.
Sorry. Goodbye, Andy. Can I help you? I'm sorry, you can't get out that way. Now, what were you searching for?
Fletcher?
Who the hell are you, and what are you doing here? Now, what is it you want? What are you supposed to be looking for?
The key, Mr. Martin.
Key? You mean the key that Mrs.
You know the
Curtis-
key I mean. Well, do I get it?
No, I'm afraid you don't. I gave it to the inspector.
Oh, yes. You gave the original key to the inspector, I know that.
What do you mean, the original key?
When you left the cafe, you took that key to an ironmonger's and had a duplicate made. I know what I'm talking about, Martin, so don't let's waste any time. Hand it over.
Yes.
Larry?
Oh, Ruth, it's you.
Larry, I forgot to tell you before I left today. Parker and Anderson's rang up about the prints for the dead.
Well, it can wait. Tell me about it tomorrow.
Larry, are you all right?
Yes. Yes, I'm all right. I'm sorry, but I had a bit of a crack on the head. I can't talk now.
Here, drink this.
Thanks.
This woman, what was her name?
Selden, Mrs. Selden.
Are you sure it was the one you saw in Arundel? The one in the antique shop?
Yes, I'm positive.
And what about the man?
Never seen him before. I'm not sure I ever want to see him again.
Larry? Why did you have the key copy?
Both Quayle and Mrs. Curtis obviously attached some importance to it, so I thought the best thing I could do would... Ruth, what's that under the table? He must have dropped it.
Who, the man who hit you?
Yes. C.F. Yes. She cried out, Fletcher.
What's that?
Dance ticket. Imperial Hotel, Camden Town. It's for the 29th. The 29th? Now, I wonder if this is the dance that Phil was going to.
Was he going to a dance?
Yes, he mentioned it that first morning. He told me not to make any arrangements for that. What are you looking at?
Somebody's written 3 names on the back of the card.
Phil.
Who's Luther Harris?
He was a friend of Phil's. He has a music shop in St. John's Wood.
Oh, yes, of course I remember Phil talking about him. The 29th. That's tomorrow.
Yes. You a good dancer, Ruth?
There's only one way of finding out, isn't there? decided to tell the truth. I can't do this sort of thing.
Now's your chance to learn. 2, please. Thank you. Well, I better join the battle of the overcoats. Your place is over there. I'll see you back here, all right? Sorry, Peg.
Thought you were never coming.
Luther!
Hello, Larry. Fancy seeing you here. I never expected to find you in a place like this.
Oh, no, this was Ruth's idea, I'm afraid. She's very fond of dancing. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Harris, this is Miss Sanders.
How do you do?
Luther was a friend of Phil's.
Oh, yes, of course. I remember now.
Oh, well, this is my fiancée, Peggy Graham.
Hello.
Delighted, I'm sure.
How do you be keeping, Larry?
Oh, not too bad, considering.
It was terrible about Phil. I was awfully upset when I heard about it.
Yes, I know, Luther. Thank you for your letter. I didn't answer because...
No, of course not. Well, we'll be seeing you, eh?
Yes, let's meet up again later, shall we? I'd like to have a talk with you, Luther.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Is there a bar here?
My God, I hope so.
Well, maybe we can all meet there later.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that, shall we? Say about 10 o'clock?
Fine. See you later, eh?
Bye.
Bye.
Was a strange character.
Yes.
Was he a close friend of yours?
I don't know. I think they used to see quite a bit of each other.
Well, I'd better get rid of this. Oh, no.
What's the matter?
I've left my handbag in the car.
Well, I'll fetch it for you.
No, just give me the keys.
All right.
I won't be a minute.
Did you get your handbag?
Larry, the photograph. The 2 people in the photograph.
Yes.
I've just seen them.